I have to start this video out by sharing this win from a guy in our marriage mastery program. Shout out to my husband. He trusted God during a very dark time in our marriage and loved me even when it was almost too heavy to bear. He carried me when I couldn't carry myself, and he showed me what unconditional love is. You are a beautiful example of God's grace and mercy. Can you imagine your wife posting that on her Facebook in front of everyone after you guys have gone through the darkest time in your life together, in your marriage, and then coming out the other side with that? Well, in today's video, I've scoured our community, and what I've found is 3 different posts sharing 3 principles that can lead to an example or result like that with your wife. But first, let me see if where you are at is similar to where most guys are in our program. And to do that, I'm gonna share one of our intro posts. We have every guy who comes into our program in the private community. They share an intro post about their situation, and everyone welcomes them and adds their 2 cents on what to do first. But let me share this one with you. I've been with my wife for nearly 38 years. She is the love of my life and the mother of my 2 kids, who are now both adults. She hasn't threatened to leave me, but she sleeps in a separate room, and I'm the one who has threatened to leave in the past. I put her in an insecure place and blamed her for the feelings of loneliness and isolation that I've had. I'm an entrepreneur, a real estate investor, business owner, software designer, teacher, and filmmaker. Not necessarily in that order. Guy's kind of badass. I've been successful in my career, but my marriage has been mostly sexless, and it has been the one great failure of my life. That probably sounds familiar to you guys. I failed her. It's hard for me to put this down in writing to admit this. Now, I read The Way of the Superior Man maybe 15 years ago looking for answers to this dilemma. Now, at the time, it didn't speak to me, or maybe it was too esoteric for me to get my head around. After finding Josh's videos on YouTube and his recommendation for the book, I dug it out again. This time, it spoke to me. I think this is because of the way Josh framed it and explained it. He's a good teacher. I mean, I'm not that bad. This time, I believe I finally accepted that it was me that was causing the problem. I'm usually someone who solves problems and gets shit done on a pretty high level, but making intimacy in my marriage work has always been a challenge. The pattern in my marriage always seemed to go like this. I work on it for a while, reading relationship books, watching videos, so she can see some change. But then after a while, things go back to status quo and I give up in failure, and she gets upset again and the whole cycle repeats, but she loses more trust. I'll continue sweeping things under the rug and move on until my heart breaks again and I'm filled with resentment and anger. And then I go through the same cycle again. Leave that same cycle again line out. This has happened for years, and years have been wasted. Now, because of this, there are times where I've treated my employees better than my wife. My expectations of her have been greater than my expectations of myself. Maybe one of the reasons I have been able to accomplish so many different things in my life is because I've used all that activity to hide from what's most important to me. Now, the last part of what he just said bleeds into our first principle. Did you guys catch the underlying tone of his message? You see, this man, I know he's gonna get success for one reason and one reason alone. He complimented me. And any guy who compliments me just gets it. Like, he just understands. No, he was taking extreme ownership. If you were to go back and replay that, listen to that, is there any mention of his wife's faults or what his wife did to him, right? He mentioned the marriage was sexless. Did he say, oh, you know, she hasn't been giving sex to me, right? Or did he mention how cold she was? I don't know how cold she is, but obviously he can have the perspective that she's done things. He put everything out there that it was because of him. And this is the thing he also mentioned, which is when he read The Way of the Superior Man, there are some messages out there that when you take it in at a certain level of consciousness or where you are at in your just perception of yourself and reality and others, you can have the most important, beautiful, transformational, life-changing information coming right at you, but it won't enter your brain because your ego won't allow it. As an example, what I get paid thousands and thousands of dollars to do now and teach, I would teach the same material to people struggling with a drug addiction for free, and they wouldn't even listen to it. They would zone out, right? I mean, I have friends that are going through relationship issues. They will never come to me, right? Because, and I don't blame them, but they see me not as this expert, right? They see me as their friend, right? Or people that they're the Josh that I grew up with playing soccer and doing all these things. So the point I'm trying to make is that Your perspective and your level of consciousness can only take in certain information. And if you can lean into the idea that you're taking extreme ownership for your actions and not focusing on her, what she's done wrong, her trauma, her bipolar, her parents affecting her, what she's doing to you, you don't have control over that. Let's zero in on what you have control over. This is important because when you can focus on things in your control, you can start measuring your progress. You can start setting goals that you can achieve. Because if you have two scenarios with two guys, and one guy's like, you know what, it's my wife's bipolar, right? I'm gonna go try to get her meds. I'm gonna try to go get her to see a therapist. And you may get some success at first, but you're not gonna be able to control her. She's gonna go do her own thing. She may get mad at you, and then you're gonna feel defeated when you're not getting progress. But if you put all the onus of taking results toward yourself, taking goals toward yourself, taking actions for your goals toward yourself, what happens is you start achieving those goals. This builds up positive momentum. When you get positive momentum, achieving your goals, things in your control, it builds up your internal self-worth. When your internal self-worth is built up, you start doing all these things automatically that I teach on this channel. You start setting stronger boundaries with her. You stop being as needy. You let go of more control because you're only controlling what you have. And you start to become addicted to the idea of only focusing on things that you can control. It is such a subtle idea here, right? That you could hear two men, and you could, I'll show you an example of this later in a post, and how I call them out, other guys in the community call them out, which is one of the principles we'll talk about. But it's important to understand the narrative that we have, right? And how we really focus on what's in our control and out of our control, okay? So if you want an example exercise right now, you could pause the video and say, what goals in trying to get your wife back or improve your marriage are you setting that are in your control? And write them down thus so. Now, the reason why you don't always have extreme ownership, why you don't always put things in your control, is because it's a defense mechanism, right? Your ego wants to say that like you have control of your environment, right? And so oftentimes when things happen to you that are damaging, threatening to you, it is more advantageous from a base survivalist point of view to say, oh, I didn't have control over this, it's okay, right? Because if something happens to you and you say you have control over it, that means you're gonna have to change. Right? But if something just happened to you and you had no control, it's like, oh, well, it wasn't my fault. I can't do anything about it, so I don't have to change. And that's where it all comes down to, right? Is that you don't have to change if you blame her. And you want your ego, I'm gonna say your ego, not you, but it's part of you. Your ego doesn't want to change because that takes energy. And your brain wants to conserve energy, right? It takes energy, it takes time, it takes effort. And you want to do nothing. You want to be complacent. I get it, right? It feels good to sit down on the couch, watch TV, do nothing instead of go to the gym and work out and drive there and come back, eat healthy. Like there's a clear distinction here, right? That you could see. Feeling good, doing things that you just want to do, not taking a lot of action, versus the man who takes full responsibility, who does the hard thing, who takes cold showers, who meditates, who does all these things. Who wants to do these things? Most of society doesn't. But an apex man that wins his wife back is on this side, okay? And that's who you were to a large degree. At least most men I speak to were. But the thing is that there's so much more that you're capable of that you haven't even realized yet. And if you can find a love and an addiction to this idea that your life is in your control, that you are the captain of your ship, and you take it wherever you want to go, as hard as it may be, it is worth it in the end. Now let me give an example of a guy, another post in the program, who he had a setback and him taking full ownership of that. I was on an incredible track with my wife, giving space, truly working on me and finding myself. She was coming back to me. We were in an amazing place. Felt like I was back to life from a near-death experience. It should have been a real death experience, completely killing off the weakness inside of me. Then as of yesterday, I faltered and failed. She wanted to go on a trip with just me and her. Huge win. Then I fell back to blaming her because she was getting drinks everywhere we went, and I felt left out and wanted to drink with her, and I tried to justify having a glass of wine with my wife. So the next place we went, I did order a glass of wine and drank it. First alcohol I've had in 60 days. She shut down, and here I was oblivious again, lying to myself, justifying it as if it isn't a big deal. It's a huge deal for her, and I broke her down again with my self-centered actions. Laying here in bed, dreading the fallout, seeing all the work I've done vaporize in an instant. I haven't slept at all tonight. I guess at some point, I shifted my motivation of working on myself to her. Then I started judging her, blaming her for the insecurities I was feeling. I compromised, justified, put her on a pedestal, and became the hypocrite I've been for most of my life yet again. I got too comfortable and lost my way. Time to step up again and lead. Eliminate the demons within and take care of the love that she has for me before it's too late. Man up. Pray for me, brothers. I need it desperately. So I would say he's a little hard on himself if I can just, nitpick here, but you see how you'll see some guys, they'll have the same exact situation, but they'll say, it was just one glass of wine. That's the first glass of wine I had in 60 days. She was out there drinking and I couldn't have one drink. I could easily see a guy saying that and rationalizing that. And it could make sense. I could argue that point to you maybe in a video and you're like, oh, I guess that makes sense, Josh. But see what he did? He's taking ownership of it, right? And there's that kicking, crying little baby that's saying no, this isn't fair. Like she shouldn't do this. That's all I hear. That's all I hear when I see that in the video. And I call guys out so hard when they do this, right? But the man who says no, I messed up. That's okay, let's pick myself up. That's the man who has that extreme ownership and builds up his self-worth. What does being emotionally connected to your spouse mean to you? I feel like it's something we say, but as I reflect on my 15-year marriage, I've been asking myself, did I ever truly develop an emotional connection with my wife? If I had, I probably wouldn't be in a situation where I'm on the verge of divorce. My wife and I still live together, but she told me if it weren't for the kids, she would have served me papers already. She sees us as co-parenting and that's it. I kept my frame and validated her feelings. I told her I did not agree with the divorce, but that was her choice. I also reiterated that I wasn't going to leave. I still had hope in our marriage, and I was going to fight for us. She acknowledged she and her friends have seen changes in me. I responded that all I can do is work on myself to be better, and I hope that it translates into our marriage. I also said I think we could have an amazing future connection. I also said I think we can have an amazing future with a connection we never had before. I did notice a softening in her demeanor and eyes. My wife is a very stubborn person, and I know it's gonna take a lot to break through her shell. But to see a noticeable change in her demeanor was so positive. I just need to stay consistent and accept my situation. Back to my question, I'm trying to find ways to spark conversations that will foster a better connection. Right now, our conversations are either about the kids or work. I've been starting asking questions before we go to bed what was the one positive thing that happened to you today? Or what's one thing you have gratitude for? Has anyone else been in the same situation? I'm trying to think of other questions and conversation starters that aren't about our future relationship or anything else that I should avoid in our current stage. I'm really trying to foster positive feelings that lay out the foundation to build from. So I call this next principle the armored heart. Now, I spoke to this client directly myself, and he might want to work with me one-on-one. And this guy is very successful, sold multiple businesses, very logical. Okay, he was like a nerd, his words, not mine, growing up, bullied, and he always struggled to really open up to others. And a lot of people who deal with trauma growing up, isolation from others, you have to put this wall up. Now, we do it a lot of different ways. People will put up a wall trying to be overly humorous. They'll put up a wall by being stoic, nonchalant. They'll put up a wall by being overly nice. Okay, these are all ways to push others away. When there's that feeling of intimacy and connection, you want to avoid it. Okay, it's just uncomfortable for you because you don't want people to see you for how you are. A way to test this is if you look at someone deep in the eyes and just stare at them. How do you feel? Can you feel comfortable staring at anyone in the eyes, just unreactively, not feeling any negativity, just either stoic or positive? You can't do that. There's something about you not wanting to be seen. And it's funny, I could totally tell the logic in his prompt here because he's looking for the exact words and conversation starters and topics, and nothing against that. There are plenty of ways to do that, but it's almost counter to actually having an emotional connection, right? He's trying to use logic to create this emotional connection. It's the same thing when I teach dating coaching, is that a lot of these guys, they would want give me the right lines. What do I say to her? What are the exact words I can text or say to a girl to get her to like me? And it's counterintuitive. You're using a masculine approach to create a connection, which is a feminine idea, okay? Connection is about not getting in your head. if I were to give him a bunch of conversation starters, questions, words, he'll be stuck in his head. Okay, what do I say next? Okay, and he's listening to her. Okay, what's the next question? And it's like a checklist. And she feels that like he's trying to get something. He's trying to get somewhere. Emotional connection is not about getting anywhere. It's about being here. It's about, emotional connection is not, it can be a conversation topic you have with her that can lead to this sharing of deep emotions and experiences and fears and hopes and dreams and like who the person is and their values. That's great. But it has to happen organically. You see, emotional connection is oftentimes actually when there's no filter in between, where there's no like forcefulness. As a powerful metaphor to think of this, imagine that you can only connect with her when all this, like, you guys are in this lake together, okay? And all this logic and thinking and words like is bringing up all the dirt from the bottom and it's all filtering, you can't see, and the water's just not clear because all the dirt. Just sitting there, looking at her in the eyes. Listening to her if you want, or just breathing and looking her in the eyes, not saying a word. That's letting that dust settle, okay? And the water gets clear. And when the water's clear, you guys connect. You get closer to each other. You can actually see her for how she truly is. When's the last time you looked at your wife and you didn't put any labels on her? You didn't see her as her name or a mother of your children or your wife even, just as like this being with no words, okay? Truly staring at her like her essence of who she is. I know I'm getting kind of like out there, but like truly, man, like this is a skill, and this is a very powerful skill. This is not only the most powerful skill, but if you've watched a lot of videos on my channel, you'll hear me say the most attractive thing you could do is this. Looking at her in one eye, or both eyes, just, right? Even in her darkest storms, in her happiest moods, you're just there with her, right? Supporting her. Connect. That's what connection is, right? That's deep emotional connection. It is not a place you go. It is a beingness. It's an embodiment. It's a here and now, okay? That's what you crave too, but you've gotten in your own way, all right? And so I would say to this guy, like, it's important for you to not think so much about it. Don't try to force it. It is the opposite, okay? So the next time you're with your wife and she's talking to you, just notice her for like the first time, like truly notice her. Pay attention to the way she smiles, or her demeanor, or her little idiosyncratic behaviors, and just don't judge it, don't put labels on it. And if you want a skill to develop this ability, meditation, if you haven't realized by now, is the skill to do this. Can you just sit there and be quiet in a room by yourself? Breathing. Not thinking, having to go places to do things, respond to emails, to fire this person, to promote that person, to get this task done, to go to... Be here. You know, personally myself, it's like growing up, I had these like two saboteurs that I had, right? Saboteur is like this idea of part of you that is like an ego defense mechanism. It's like trying to overcompensate because of trauma, right? One of them was the people pleaser, trying to make other people happy. And the other one was the hyperachiever, which that one has become more prevalent in my life with focusing on business. But like, I'll hear that voice in my head. It's like,
go do this thing. You have to do this. Like, if you're not doing something productive, you're a piece of crap.
Shame, right? How dare you? Like, you need to do things and you need to get stuff done. It's like, holy crap, that voice is mean, right? And recognize these voices and let them fade away. When you're with people, you're giving her that presence, just like that. And so that's what I would say to this guy as well. And he brings up a really good point. That's how you connect with her. Now, one more caveat on this before we go to the final point. The next principle is when you do talk to her, I'm going to give you some like words to say. You don't think of like, okay, I'm going to say this topic and I'm going to talk about this thing. No, that's a logical conversation. That does not build attraction. Emotional communication builds attraction. Emotional communication is when you're not in your head, you're just speaking, you're free flowing. Do you have the ability to walk up to a wall? And if I were to give you a prompt, this is an exercise you could do. I give you a prompt and I say, talk about this for 15 minutes. And it's not even something that you're into, right? Talk about, let's say you've never gone boating before. Talk about boats for 15 minutes, right? Talk about cats for 20 minutes, right? And you're just like, man, today, oh my God, cats are just the craziest things. Like, how are they even evolved? Do they raise us or do we raise them? Like, who is in charge here, right? We clean up their poop. We do all these things for them. Yeah, They give us a little bit of love when on their terms. I think we're actually the pets for them. Like random crap, right? And so your ability to come home from your wife after your work or come home to her and just talk to her. There's no agenda. There's no right or wrong thing to say. You're just sharing your authentic self. That's also how you build connection from a value perspective, right? The ability to listen to her with no agenda and the ability to communicate with no agenda, okay? That builds attraction and connection more than anything else, you see? There's no right or wrong way to do this. The only right or wrong way to do it, the wrong way to do it, is to be in your head about it, trying to get somewhere, trying to be needy. That's having that outcome in mind. And she feels that outcome-oriented process, and that's what she projects, okay? Well, after being in the program a little while and making some significant improvements on myself, my wife has told me she wants to officially separate and do whatever she wants with whoever she wants. I told her that it is against my values and goes way past my boundaries. I said she can't expect me to lower my value to accommodate her wants. A friend who has done a similar course, I wonder which one, said, you have a Ferrari and you lent it to a mate. He drives it like it's stolen and smashes it up, and he returns it with its very low value. Would you want it back, or would you just want to go get a new Ferrari? Remembering, you are the high value man. The one positive is that he's recognizing he has boundaries, and he has an awareness that boundaries are being crossed. That's the positive out of this post and this man, okay? Don't ever compare your wife to a fucking Ferrari, okay? Or to a car. Like, it seems like some people think, oh, it's not a big deal. It's like, oh yeah, like Ferrari's a great car. Comparing a human being to any object, I'm not saying like, oh, you're objectifying her, but like you were literally reducing her down to an object, right? You were minimizing the complexity of human nature and the situation you're in. And I understand this guy's hurt. This is coming from pain. I know this is coming from pain. He feels attacked. He's like, oh, how dare you? I'm never gonna do that. You're never gonna, right? That's the energy I'm feeling from this post. And underneath that anger that I can feel through these texts, these words, and by the way, everyone who commented on this, called him the fuck out. He's in a lot of pain, okay? Now, this principle is the idea that your narrative does shape your reality, right? And in this situation, viewing that his wife wants different things with different people, that can be a boundary you have. And if it is, you should assert that. Before you do, pause. Step one, pause. Right? Don't react. Don't do something that is coming from the place of the pain. Because hurt people, right? And you're gonna do and say things just to make the situation worse. Whether you want to be with her or not, right? The second thing you're gonna do is you're gonna ask yourself, why is she actually doing this? Why is she doing this? Is she doing it for no reason? Right? Like, what is it about you that she's rejecting? It's like, I see that this is victimhood. This is what everyone commented below on this, like victim, you're being a victim, right? We talked about that's the opposite of the apex man, right? This is why he got like whoosh into place, right? He just started the program, so like he'll get it. But yeah, man, she's doing this for many reasons. And whether you set that boundary or not, it's important to recognize like how you got yourself in the situation, why she wants to see other people. She's leaving you, who you've been, not who you're gonna become, but who you've been. If you're gonna set this boundary correctly, it's about coming to her and being like, hey, like, I understand why you're doing this for X, Y, Z reason that I've took some thoughtful time into. So I understand it, I get it, because you feel this way about me and you feel this way about the situation. Now he has to ask himself whether he truly wants to be with her or not, okay? Because right now he's not saying that. He's like, oh, my friend said that this is a metaphor. Yeah, like, okay. Does that mean you're not gonna work on the program? Does that mean you're not gonna try to get her back? Like, what does that mean, right? So you have to realize is like the things she's done to you, are you gonna forgive her and try to get her back and work on yourself? Or are you gonna move on? Like, if moving on is something you truly want, she's crossed a boundary that you cannot come back from, fine. Like, don't be in a marriage. Don't try to be with someone you don't wanna be with, never. But when you pause, like I said, look within yourself, then you find your answers like, do you still wanna try to work it out? If that is the case, let's say for this guy, he does wanna work it out. He's like, okay, despite all that, I do wanna work it out. Good, okay, fine. After you tell her why she's doing what she's doing, understanding where she's coming from, when you assert that boundary saying, look, I don't feel comfortable you doing this, and this is the reason why. I know that's about me, but I have to communicate how I authentically feel about this. And I don't know if I can come back from this. I'm gonna work on myself, and I still have a desire to want to work this out with you down the road, whether you want to or not. I'm gonna focus on myself, and if that opportunity does arise down the road, I wanna take that, but it'd be a lot harder for me to forgive you and want to be with you if you've seen other people. It's funny because like when I actually talk to a lot of these guys that where the wives are seeing someone else, like they've either cheated themselves, right? Or they watched years of porn, or they were emotionally neglected for years. They flirted with other girls at their work. They've had friends that are women that they've crossed boundaries, right? So it's like, and I've seen that so often. And it's like, how could she do this to me? So the idea or the principle here is that your narrative, we talked about this in the beginning, right? I'm tying it all together. Your narrative does dictate your perception, right? It's a reflection of your perception. Your narrative is the way you speak. And from this guy's narrative, I can tell that he feels attacked, he feels hurt, right? And unless you process that pain and work through it and heal through it, like she's healing through her pain, you're only gonna say and do things from that place of pain, and it's only gonna cause more pain, more mistrust, less intimacy, less commitment, more pain. It's gonna replicate with the next woman if you don't figure it out with her, okay? I've seen it far too many times. There is all this buried pain that you have, and I guarantee it doesn't start with her, his wife. It goes back further. But before we go back in the past, we have to start in the present, right? And so, this is the beauty about having a private group of 1,000 other men who've been through situations just like yours and can see these little micro reflections of like these maladaptive beliefs and perceptions you have, and correcting, challenging them. Because if you're left to your own devices with your friends or everyone else in your life or these books you read, it's like no one can truly hone in on these like limiting perceptions you have and then like freaking call you out on them, right? And that's what growth is, right? Iron sharpens iron. And you see like our community, I'm so proud of them. I'm scrolling through the Facebook posts, and like I don't even have to say anything anymore. I do because I love commenting on the posts and sharing and helping, but like all these other guys who've been in the program for so long, they get it, right? And like guys get results so much faster because they're being called out, and then they have the coaches with them too. So if that does sound good to you and you want that support and you want to make these changes to become a better man, to win her back, to keep your family together, you can set up a call down below. We have a limited amount of spots each and every week. It is a free call, but you have to be fully committed. And if we think you're a good fit, we will offer you a possibility to join Marriage Mastery, okay? We don't accept every single guy, okay? We really don't. We don't even accept every single application, depending on what your answers are to the application, okay? We want guys that are fully committed. We really protect our community and only want men that are full action takers and non-victims, right? And this is why, we call it out when we see it so fast, because we don't want that in the community, okay? This is a private brotherhood of men that are supporting each other to grow into the best versions of themselves. That's why we're here, okay? All right, man. Thanks for watching the video to the very end. You are a true brother, and I'll see you in the next one.